this is one of the questions of our future, this as well as aquaculture. It's a topic that's gaining momentum, and I find it's a natural path for most people wanting so badly to hang on to the false sense of needing versus simply wanting to eat animal products. It's a path of least resistance. Let's look at a couple different ways to answer this question then. Oh, there you have it. That's one way to answer it. I mean, he thinks so, and so do many others. My thought, though, is that we need to be fully aware of the consequences of our food choices, not partially aware. And we need to understand what we're doing to all areas of global depletion. And we need to know the magnitude and the urgency of the problem. You know what? This is not a go meatless on Monday type of problem. So let's take a look at another way to answer this question, at how sustainable raising grass-fed livestock really is. To do this, I think it's time to go to the very essence of the problem. If we gave everyone in the room 1 acre of land, which might be difficult to do where we are here, but let's give everyone in the room 1 acre of land to grow any food you choose. What would you grow? What sounds good? I like it. Yeah, what should you grow? At all my other college and university lectures, the students know what they want to grow. I haven't figured out what that is yet, but it it probably should be it probably should be, yeah, it is. It probably should be the male hemp plant. And remember, we're talking about food here, but on this 1 acre, you could try to raise 1 grass-fed cow, just like that, thinking it's fully sustainable, just like that New York Times multiple-time best-selling author is telling everyone. But in most areas of the world, 1 acre is not enough. You're going to need 5, 10, even 20 acres for that 1 cow. So you'll have to borrow some land from somebody. You've already lost the game. Or you could kick the cow off, and no offense to the cow, and plant something like this. You could plant just plants. You could plant on half your acre, you could plant this. You could plant any one of a number of plants, thousands and thousands to choose from. Kale's a good example, though. Provides you with much needed micronutrients, fiber, 62 to 70 phytonutrients, things you can't get from any body part on that cow. When looking at global growing applications, how cool is this? Plants like collard greens and kale and many other greens actually continue to grow through extremes of temperatures, from -5 degrees here in my backyard through 105 degrees Fahrenheit. And after you pick the leaves from kale or collard greens, does anybody know what happens? They grow back. Yeah, they regenerate. Ha! I bet your cow can't do that. And on the other half an acre, you could plant quinoa or kamut or buckwheat or amaranth or, all ancient grain power foods. You could plant potatoes, beans, fruit. There's so many plants to choose from. So there you have it. If you use your 1 acre for a grass-fed livestock, you'd end up with 100 to 400 pounds of a food type that's then implicated in numerous disease states. And along the way, you produce 3 to 4 tons of methane and carbon dioxide, and you've used minimally 30,000 gallons of water just for that animal to drink. In most cases, you're going to use 1 million to 2 million gallons of green and blue water for that 1 cow. Or instead, if you use your acre of land to grow something like this combination of plants we're talking about, you produce 20 to 50,000 pounds of food that's infinitely healthier for you to eat and for our planet to grow. It's literally astounding what you can produce on that 1 acre over the period of time it takes to raise your 1 grass-fed cow. It's quite an amazing difference, isn't it? And now imagine extrapolating that model out, or variations thereof, in terms of global use of our resources. And now answer that question about how sustainable raising grass-fed livestock really is. That's what I'm asking here before I was dismissed from the farm. No, I wasn't. And for those who still think that eating any animal is sustainable, then it's time to introduce this concept: relative sustainability, or optimal relative sustainability. That'll work. How sustainable is it to raise and eat any animal product in a relative sense as compared to plant-based foods? How can we best use our resources? What foods will have the very least effect on climate change? Which foods best promote our own human health? And which are the most compassionate? This is the way we need to start viewing things, in a relative sense. So for me, it's not really at all about how or even if a certain food item is cooked. I mean, that's ridiculous. I'm much more concerned about where that food item came from, which lives and resources it took to get that food item to our plate, and then, of course, what effect it has on us afterwards. That's what's important. Now, isn't this a beautiful countryside scene? Beautiful blue skies and green grass and rolling hills. This happens to be in the northeast section of Victoria, Australia, where I was researching the ecological effects of their food choices. And instead of seeing beautiful blue skies or green grass, I like taking a closer look at things like this. So here's what I see in this photo. I see this: depletion of land, air, food, water, inefficient use of our resources. It's happening here as quickly as anywhere else in the world. And I also see something else, which is the main reason I visited this specific area to research. I mean, lock in this area or this view for just a moment as we advance. We're going to leave this area. We're going to just get out of the car and go down the road a few hundred yards and get off our bikes. And this is what we see. This 1,000-year-old forest is what that cattle ranch used to be. And it was the home to numerous insects, plants, and animals. There are 3 different types of eucalyptus trees growing here, and one animal in particular that I was looking for, which is now endangered due to destroying its home. It's this little guy. All of his family members were killed. Thousands are each year. He now lives in a small, remote rescue area in that forest, and he represents species everywhere on our planet that are being devastated by cattle and other livestock operations on land, fishing in our oceans, lack of awareness about food choice, and politics. In fact, koalas are predicted to become extinct in just 20 years. It's quite sad, and that's what I see in this view, whether it's in Australia or in the United States or anywhere else in the world. Now, about the Go Meatless on Monday campaign, presuming you're eating meat the rest of the week. If you do this, if you go meatless on Mondays, you'll be contributing to climate change, pollution, global depletion of our planet's resources, and your own health on only 6 days of the week instead of 7. You'll be creating a false justification for your actions on those other 6 days of the week. In other words, let's not rest on the laurels of what you're doing right only 1/7 of the time. And baby steps. What are those? I think it's time we do away with baby steps. Because, well, yeah. Because that's right. Because we're in fact not babies, are we? If you think about it, all of us are quite capable of taking big person steps right now. And our planet and all the animals on it shouldn't have to wait with repeated and ongoing assault until we get this figured out. What does eating less meat really mean? Just in the 1 hour I have been speaking here this morning, from 9 to 10 o'clock, actually 9:15, 9:20 to 10:20, in 1 hour, over 8 million animals were slaughtered for us to eat during that 1 hour. 114,000 tons of grain were fed the livestock that we're raising. But during that same hour, 684 children in the world have died from starvation. 6,000 acres of tropical rainforest were destroyed and replaced by cattle or crops to feed them, and over 4 million tons of greenhouse gases have been dumped into our atmosphere by livestock. Therefore, I'm advocating a much different approach than what Mark Bittman and others suggest when they state we should eat less meat. Because with that approach of eating less meat, only 7 million animals will be slaughtered in the next hour. Only 113,000 tons of grain will be wasted, leaving only 683 children in the world that will starve to death in that 1 hour, and only 3 million tons of greenhouse gases will be emitted by livestock. Isn't that what less means? So unlike Jamie Oliver or Mark Bittman or Michael Pollan or all other eat less meat advocates and food gurus that we're all hearing, I think those numbers should be 0. I sure do. And absolutely. Thank you. And it's easily attainable. There's no magic involved. Nothing has to be invented. No new technologies have to be employed. It's simply with what we choose to eat. And now we're going to take a look at the food service section of the policy of sustainability for the entire University of California system. Why? Well, because this is a perfect example of how efforts of well-intentioned individuals and institutions can be so very far out of alignment with reality because of the definitions they're using. So you tell me, is this sustainable? Is this a sustainable policy? What about the items I just highlighted in orange? Are those sustainable? How about the primary objective of 20% by the year 2020? Who thought of that? Is that sustainable? Where does this policy fit in terms of relative sustainability? Or are these merely baby steps that happen to affect 500,000 students, faculty, and staff, and millions of animals and our planet? And it's not much better on this with campuses on this side of the country, is it? I took this right off the dining services website at Harvard. Pretty cognizant of sustainable food systems there, aren't they? And here's another campus on this side of the country that could certainly use some enlightenment, serving a pig roast as celebration of the Yale Sustainable Food Project. I mean, really. And close to home here, with nearly $3 billion in endowments. You'd think that NYU could afford to increase its level of food choice awareness. This climate action plan document is nicely written. A lot of effort went into this, except it doesn't mention food choice anywhere. It doesn't mention it anywhere in this 80-page document, so how sustainable are their attempts going to be? And it looks like at NYU they plan to wait 25 years to integrate a full mission of education about sustainability. That'll work. So even at these prestigious universities, West Coast, East Coast, and everywhere in between, they would certainly benefit from understanding and then adopting a more accurate view of sustainability and then translating it to their students, our future leaders, and to do it now. And one more important definition that needs refinement: ethics. The ethical consideration of what we choose to eat. The topic of conscious eating has always been about animal rights, animal welfare, hasn't it? Yeah, the life and death of other living beings that we consume, how they're treated. Ethics has always been about this. But I think it's time to view conscious eating or ethics in a much different and a much larger context. Is it ethical, for instance, for any of us to eat food that causes the extinction of other species if we don't need to? Is it ethical for the vast majority of humans on Earth to cause irreversible, or at least contribute heavily to irreversible climate change, loss of ecosystems, and resource depletion, while 2% of us are living our lives through our food choices to protect Earth? Is it ethical for any of us to use our planet in a way that exacerbates world hunger and extracts the potential for future generations to survive? Is it even ethical for 310 million Americans to impose their diet-related health care costs on the 5 million or less who choose to eat the right foods? So you see, it's time we rethink ethics. It needs to be framed much differently than just with animal rights or animal welfare, which is fine. In fact, one of the chapters in my new book, which has just been published and is available now. One of the chapters in my next book is titled, "Why Should I Pay for What Everyone Else Decides to Eat?" Really. And if we don't change fairly soon, well, the animals are going to take matters into their own hands. Look out. Look out, here they come. Almost everything we do, every decision we make, every day, is based on our culture, what we've learned, what someone else has told us to be acceptable or necessary. After realizing that bloodletting here wasn't so healthy for us after all, we miraculously stopped, even though we've been doing it for more than 3,000 years. There are culturally driven practices we are accepting today, especially with food choices involving all animal products, that are much more unhealthy for our planet and for us than bloodletting. And by all counts, we don't have 3,000 years to get it right. A number of organizations and governments are quite concerned about how we're going to feed 9 billion people expected to inhabit Earth by the year 2050, because global demand for food, including meat and dairy products, will double from what it is today. So they put together a high-level expert forum to explore solutions, this being one of their solutions. You know what? They're absolutely right, though. Livestock does hold great importance. The less we raise, the more secure food will be. And according to the United Nations, these key problems need to be resolved in order to feed 9 billion people by the year 2050. Throughout this last hour, we've effectively answered these questions for the United Nations, haven't we? Anybody here? Anybody here from the United Nations? Thank you.